You know that feeling? When something so utterly outrageous is happening right in front of you, aimed directly at you, but the person causing it has absolutely no clue. It's a bizarre mix of disbelief, rising anger, and a strange, almost detached sense of, well, impending justice. That's exactly what washed over me, standing there in my own restaurant, on our busiest night, listening to a woman loudly demand the best table by proclaiming she was my best friend. I don't care if it's reserved. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the festive buzz of our anniversary celebration. She pointed that perfectly manicured finger, crimson nail gleaming under the lights, towards our prime VIP booth. I know Chloe, the owner. She told me, personally, that I could have any table I want, whenever I want. Now, are you going to get me that table, or do I need to have her fire you? My manager, Julian, looked pained but professional. The nearby diners had fallen silent, forks paused halfway to their mouths. And this woman, this Karen, she stood there radiating smug certainty, utterly oblivious. Oblivious to the fact that the Chloe she was simultaneously name-dropping and threatening was standing less than 3 feet away, wearing a simple black blouse and an apron, having just cleared a nearby table. She thought invoking the owner's name was her trump card. She had no idea she was playing it directly into the owner's hand. And I knew, right then and there, after weeks of her escalating entitlement, this was finally going to end. Tonight. And not in the way she expected. Her reign of restaurant terror, fueled by a lie about knowing me, was about to crash and burn spectacularly, right here, right now. But let me back up and tell you how we got to this point. My life, before Karen decided to make my restaurant her personal stage, revolved around controlled chaos, the beautiful, demanding chaos of running the Gilded Spoon. My name is Chloe, and this place wasn't just a business. It was the culmination of every dream I'd ever had, every ounce of sweat I'd poured out working my way up in the hospitality world since I was basically a kid. Starting as a nervous 16-year-old busser, hiding chipped plates, I'd climbed the ladder. Waitress, bartender, assistant manager. I'd seen the good, the bad, and the truly bizarre sides of this industry. Building the Gilded Spoon was a battle. As a woman seeking funding and respect in a field that still has its share of old boys clubs, I faced skepticism, navigated tricky leases, and poured not just my life savings but also borrowed funds from family into making it happen. There were moments I thought it wouldn't work, nights spent staring at spreadsheets with blurry eyes, fueled by cheap coffee and sheer willpower. Failure wasn't an option. This had to succeed. And it did. The Gilded Spoon became my sanctuary, my pride and joy. We focused on upscale but approachable modern American food, celebrating local farmers and producers. I agonized over every single detail, the specific shade of deep blue for the velvet banquettes, the warmth of the Edison bulbs hanging overhead, the weight and feel of the linen napkins, the curated playlist that was meant to be sophisticated but never intrusive. I wanted it to feel like a special occasion spot that still felt welcoming, like a luxurious embrace. My management style was hands-on. You wouldn't find me tucked away in an office counting receipts all day. I thrived on the energy of the floor, greeting guests, checking on tables, tasting dishes with my incredible head chef, Antoine, whose creativity constantly amazed me. My team was the heart and soul of the place. From Julian, my maitre d', whose calm demeanor could soothe ruffled feathers better than anyone I knew, to Sarah, my sharp floor manager, and every server, bartender, busser, and dishwasher, I'd chosen them carefully. I believed fiercely in treating them well, paying them a living wage plus tips, listening to their concerns, and defending them fiercely when necessary. We worked hard, we laughed often, usually after closing, and we functioned like a well-oiled, slightly eccentric family. We'd hit our stride after 2 years, building a solid reputation, earning positive reviews, and cultivating a wonderful base of regular customers who appreciated the quality and the atmosphere. Life felt good. Challenging, yes, always demanding, but fundamentally good and stable. Then came that fateful Friday night, the night the carefully balanced ecosystem of the Gilded Spoon encountered its first Category 5 Karen. It was a standard, bustling Friday. The dining room thrummed with happy energy, the clink of silverware punctuated by laughter and conversation. Julian was orchestrating the front door ballet, greeting arriving guests, managing the waitlist with his usual grace. I was doing my rounds, smoothing invisible tablecloth wrinkles, sharing a quick word with regulars, just soaking in the ambience of my dream come true. That's when I saw her make her entrance. She didn't just walk in. She swept in, bypassing a couple who were patiently waiting their turn at the host stand. Her aura screamed, "Look at me, but don't waste my time." Expensive athleisure wear, clearly chosen for status, not sweat. A sharply tailored blazer over it. That distinctive, severe blonde bob haircut, angled just so. Huge sunglasses pushed atop her head like a tiara, despite the evening hour. And the requisite large, designer tote bag practically announcing its price tag. She didn't offer Julian a greeting, just a sharp tap of a perfectly lacquered fingernail on his reservation ledger. "Table for two," she declared, her voice pitched just loud enough to assert importance. "We require the corner booth by the window." She gestured imperiously towards booth 4, our most sought-after spot, currently occupied by a couple radiating anniversary bliss, complete with celebratory champagne. I felt an immediate internal sigh. I recognized the type. My difficult customer, radar pinged silently. Julian offered his polished, professional smile. "Good evening, madam. Welcome to the Gilded Spoon. Do you have a reservation with us tonight?" A dismissive wave of her hand. "No. I don't need one. That booth will be fine." "I do apologize," Julian replied, his tone flawlessly polite. "That booth is currently occupied for the evening, and we are fully booked with reservations. I could offer you a seat at the bar immediately, or perhaps a table on our heated patio might become available in approximately 45 minutes. Her eyebrows, which looked like they'd been microbladed into permanent surprise, shot upwards. 45 minutes. Don't be absurd. And I certainly don't sit on patios. I want that booth." She pointed again, her finger jabbing the air. "Those people look practically finished. Just ask them to leave." My jaw tightened slightly. Asking paying guests to leave? The sheer nerve. I saw Julian take one of his almost imperceptible deep breaths, the kind that means he's internally counting to 10. "Madam, booth 4 is reserved for the entire evening, and our policy is never to rush our guests. The current estimated wait for a standard table inside is closer to an hour tonight, possibly a bit more given the walk-ins." A noise escaped her lips, somewhere between a scoff and a gasp. "An hour? This is utterly ridiculous. Don't you people have any idea who I am?" It wasn't really a question. She leaned forward then, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial stage whisper that carried easily. "Maybe you should check with your manager. Certain people, important people, receive priority here. People who are friendly with the owner, if you catch my drift." There it was. The first vague, entitled insinuation. Julian remained a statue of professional calm. "Our owner believes in treating all our guests with equal importance, madam. And our reservation and seating policies apply consistently. However, I would be happy to call my floor manager over if you wish to discuss it further." Karen sniffed disdainfully. "Fine," she snapped, tossing her blonde bob. "Do that. Perhaps they will possess a shred of common sense. Honestly, the service here is not what it used to be." My floor manager, Sarah, who had discreetly positioned herself nearby, stepped forward immediately. Sarah is fantastic, efficient, calm under pressure, and utterly unflappable. She listened patiently as Karen repeated her demand for booth 4, her voice laced with irritation, adding embellishments about how certain clientele should be accommodated without question. Sarah handled it with textbook grace. She calmly explained the reservation policy again, sympathized with Karen's disappointment, though I suspected her sympathy was purely professional, and reiterated the alternatives Julian had offered. She didn't yield an inch on the booth. Karen argued for several more minutes, her voice growing louder, her gestures becoming more dramatic. She checked her expensive watch repeatedly, sighed heavily, and generally performed her frustration for anyone who might be watching. Eventually, realizing she was hitting a brick wall of polite refusal, she relented, but with ill grace.
Fine.
Just give me whatever table you have. But this is unacceptable. Completely unacceptable. Sarah led her towards a small two-top near the service station pass. Functional, but definitely not prime real estate, and probably the only thing available without a significant wait. As she followed Sarah, Karen shot a venomous glare back towards Julian at the host stand. "This isn't over," she muttered, loud enough for Julian and the waiting couple behind her to hear clearly. "I will be mentioning this level of incompetence to Chloe personally. She values my opinion." I felt that familiar prickle of annoyance again, stronger this time. Using my name like that, twisting it into a threat against my own staff, it felt deeply disrespectful. But still, I compartmentalized. Maybe she was just having a bad day. Maybe she'd vent and move on. Hospitality involves absorbing a certain amount of misplaced frustration. I mentally filed the incident, made a note to thank Julian and Sarah for their professionalism, and hoped fervently that this Karen wouldn't become a regular fixture. Unfortunately, my hope was misplaced. That Friday night wasn't an isolated incident. It was merely the prologue. Karen, it turned out, had decided the Gilded Spoon was her new territory to mark, and her campaign of entitlement was just beginning. The one-star online review appeared like clockwork a few days later. It was vicious, vague enough to be deniable if confronted, but pointed enough that we knew exactly who wrote it. Overrated and overpriced, it screamed in digital text. Staff are snooty and clearly untrained. Management seems uninterested in genuine customer feedback. The ambience tries too hard and fails. I have dined at Michelin-starred restaurants worldwide, and this establishment wouldn't even qualify as a decent diner. Save your money. Word is getting around the foodie community. Avoid. It stung, especially the lie about word getting around, clearly designed to inflict maximum damage. I responded politely, professionally, inviting the reviewer to contact me directly to discuss their concerns, an invitation I knew Karen would never accept. Then she started returning, sporadically at first, then more frequently, perhaps once every couple of weeks. She learned to make reservations, sometimes under her own name, sometimes under generic ones like Miller or Davis. Each visit became a masterclass in microaggressions and overt demands. One evening, she arrived with a friend and was seated at a perfectly lovely table by the window, not booth 4, but still desirable. Within minutes, she flagged down her server, Liam, a bright young man who is usually cheerful and efficient. She complained the lighting overhead was casting unflattering shadows. Liam politely offered to see if the dimmer could be adjusted slightly for the section, though it was set to our standard evening level. No, Karen waved him off. It's this specific bulb. It needs changing. And frankly, the music is far too loud. Chloe likes a much softer ambience, I know for a fact. We discussed it over brunch last week. Liam, flustered, apologized and said he'd mention it to the manager, knowing full well we couldn't change a bulb mid-service and that the music level was carefully set. She spent the rest of her meal sighing dramatically and occasionally glaring up at the light fixture. Another time, she brought a small group for a celebration allegedly. She tried to insist on ordering off menu, demanding Antoine prepare a complex dish she'd supposedly had years ago at a different restaurant. When politely informed that we couldn't accommodate such a specific request without advance notice and ingredient availability, she huffed. Well, that's disappointing. Chloe usually tells Antoine to make whatever I like. She considers me family. She then proceeded to find fault with every dish that was served. The soup was tepid, it was steaming. The salad dressing was too acidic, it was our standard vinaigrette, beloved by regulars. Her friend's fish was overcooked, it was perfect. She didn't demand comps outright that time, but her passive-aggressive complaints left her server, Maria, feeling stressed and defensive. Her claims about her friendship with me grew increasingly elaborate. "Oh, Chloe and I get weekly manicures together," she casually mentioned to Julian one night while demanding he rearrange seating to give her a better table than the one reserved for her. "She tells me everything about the restaurant's challenges." Another time, complaining about the cost of a premium wine. "Honestly, the markup here is getting steep. I might need to have a word with Chloe. She usually gives me the friends and family discount anyway." My staff knew it was nonsense, but hearing my name constantly invoked that way was unsettling and manipulative. Julian and Sarah started keeping a detailed log in our manager note system. Karen, last name unknown, arrived 7:15 p.m., residential under Davis. Complained about table 12 noise level, neighboring table celebrating quietly. Demanded different table immediately. Claimed Chloe promised her priority seating always. Relocated to table 8 after 10 minutes wait. Comped 1 glass of wine after complaint slow service. Order taken within 3 minutes. Reading these entries filled me with a simmering frustration. I started to actively dread seeing her name on the reservation list or recognizing her walking through the door. The stress wasn't just mine. It was palpable among the team. Liam, after the lighting incident, seemed genuinely upset. I found him taking a moment in the staff area later, looking downcast. "She just makes you feel stupid, you know," he told me quietly. "Like everything you do is wrong. And then she drops the owner's name, makes you second-guess if you should be breaking the rules for her." That conversation solidified something for me. This wasn't just about annoyance anymore. Karen's behavior was actively harming my team's morale. It was creating an environment of anxiety. I discussed it more seriously with Julian and Sarah. "Should we just refuse her reservations?" I asked, torn between wanting peace and fearing escalation. "We could," Julian said thoughtfully. "But she seems like the type to make a huge scene, maybe even claim discrimination online. It could backfire badly." Sarah agreed. "Right now, we're managing it. It's awful, but contained. Banning her preemptively might make things worse, give her ammunition." So, we stuck to the plan. Document everything, enforce policies politely but firmly, and never, ever give her the special treatment she craved. We hoped, perhaps foolishly, that eventually, without the positive reinforcement of getting her way, she'd give up and find somewhere else to torment. My internal conflict grew, the fierce desire to protect my people warring with the pragmatic need to avoid unnecessary public drama for the business. I felt like a pressure cooker, the anger and frustration building inside me with each logged incident, each sigh of relief when she left without a major blowup. The tension ratcheted up further when she started leaving targeted negative reviews mentioning specific staff members by vague description. The dark-haired maitre d' was incredibly rude and unaccommodating. Julian, the blonde waitress, seemed completely lost and messed up our drink order twice. Sarah, who hadn't even served her table that night but had spoken to her. These felt personal, designed to intimidate and punish the very people upholding the restaurant's standards against her demands. We were all walking a tightrope, trying to maintain professionalism while dealing with calculated psychological warfare disguised as customer complaints.
It was exhausting.
And it was all heading towards a breaking point. We just didn't know it would arrive with such explosive force on our second anniversary weekend. Our second anniversary. 2 years. It felt monumental. We'd planned this weekend for months. Special menus, champagne flights, live jazz, the works. The restaurant was booked absolutely solid, back-to-back reservations from opening until close. It was precisely the kind of high-stakes, high-energy environment that demanded flawless execution and, apparently, attracted drama like a magnet. Given the guaranteed chaos and the fact that one of my best servers had succumbed to a sudden flu bug, I decided to roll up my sleeves and dive into the trenches. I put on a practical black blouse, comfortable trousers, tied my hair back securely, and told Julian and Sarah I was an extra pair of hands wherever needed. Running food, clearing plates, helping at the host stand. It felt good to be actively involved, shoulder to shoulder with my team on such an important night. Most regulars recognized me, offering congratulations, but to anyone new, particularly amidst the hustle and bustle, I likely just blended in as part of the senior staff. It was this anonymity, this misidentification, that set the stage for the final act. The vibe in the restaurant was electric. The jazz trio played smooth, celebratory tunes. Laughter and conversation filled the air. Antoine's kitchen team was performing miracles, plating exquisite dishes with speed and precision. Julian commanded the front door like a maestro, greeting guests, managing the flow seamlessly. Everything was running like a well-oiled machine. Until about 8 o'clock. Right at the peak of the dinner rush, the heavy oak doors swung open, and in marched Karen. She wasn't alone. She had 2 companions in tow, a man and a woman who looked vaguely uncomfortable, like unwilling accessories to whatever scene was about to unfold. Karen, however, radiated confidence. She completely ignored the velvet rope line and the small cluster of guests waiting to be acknowledged, making a beeline straight for Julian at the podium. Her designer bag swung with purpose. "We're here," she announced loudly, scanning the dining room. "Table for 3. Booth 4, naturally." Julian consulted his digital reservation system, his face a perfect mask of polite efficiency. "Good evening, madam. Welcome back. Booth 4 is currently reserved for Mr. Henderson and his party. They booked it several weeks ago specifically for the anniversary tasting menu." Karen let out an exaggerated sigh. "Henderson? Never heard of him. Irrelevant. I need that table. Chloe specifically told me it would be held for me tonight." I was standing just off to the side, arranging menus on a credenza, and my blood ran cold. Her audacity was breathtaking. Using my name again, weaving an even more specific lie on our busiest night. "I'm afraid there must be some confusion," Julian said, his voice impeccably calm despite the blatant provocation. "All our VIP booths were reserved far in advance for this special weekend. I do anticipate a lovely table near the fireplace becoming available in about 30 minutes, if you'd care to wait in our bar area." 30 minutes. Karen's voice climbed half an octave, sharp enough to draw glances from several nearby tables. The hum of conversation noticeably dipped. "Are you even listening to me?" I said. "Chloe
Promised me that
specific table. She knows it's the only place I'll sit. This is utterly unprofessional. Don't you know who I am?" Her companions shifted awkwardly, avoiding eye contact with anyone. The man muttered something under his breath that sounded like, "Maybe we should just..." But Karen ignored him. Sarah, ever vigilant, approached the podium to back Julian up. "Madam," she began, her tone conciliatory, "perhaps we could find you another very comfortable table? We have a lovely spot opening dash." Karen cut her off, turning the full force of her indignation on Sarah. "Don't patronize me. This is our anniversary celebration too," she declared suddenly, apparently deciding to hijack the occasion entirely. "And I am not just any customer. I am a personal friend of the owner.
Chloe.
You know, brunette about my height, always impeccably dressed in those fabulous power suits. We have lunch virtually every week. She was just complaining to me about how the service has slipped lately unless she's personally overseeing things." She gestured vaguely around the room, her description of me so laughably inaccurate. I'm noticeably taller, and while I dress professionally, my daily reality involves far more practical attire than power suits, It would have been funny if her tone wasn't so poisonous. She planted her hands on her hips, puffed up with self-importance. Now, she demanded, pointing a finger first at Julian, then Sarah. Are you going to tell Mr. Whoever he is to vacate my booth? Or do I need to get Chloe on the phone right this second? She will be absolutely furious when she hears how her dearest friend is being treated. Get her down here.
Now.
She'll sort you two out in a heartbeat. Probably fire you both on the spot for incompetence. The air crackled with tension. The silence was deafening. Every diner in the vicinity seemed frozen, watching the drama unfold. Karen stood there, chin high, a smug smirk playing on her lips, utterly convinced of her impending victory. She thought she held the ultimate weapon, her fictional friendship with the owner. She was about to find out just how badly it could backfire. This was the moment. The culmination of weeks of abuse and manipulation. The turning point had arrived, delivered by Karen herself, gift-wrapped in pure, unadulterated entitlement. A beat stretched, thick with anticipation. Karen tapped her foot impatiently, expecting Julian or Sarah to crumble, to rush off and appease her demands. Her companions looked like they wanted the floor to swallow them whole. That's when I moved. I stepped out deliberately from behind the credenza, placing myself directly in Karen's line of sight, right between her and my managers. I didn't rush, didn't betray any anger in my posture, just moved with quiet purpose. I could feel the weight of dozens of eyes shifting towards me. Actually, I said, my voice steady and clear, easily cutting through the charged silence. There seems to be some confusion here. Karen barely spared me a glance, waving a dismissive hand in my direction. Not now, sweetie, she snapped, her focus still laser-locked on Sarah. This requires someone with authority. Go check on the bread baskets or something. We need the owner. I held my ground, meeting her condescending gaze directly. I believe, I stated calmly, you were asking for Chloe? Her eyes narrowed, impatience flaring.
Yes.
Finally. Are you going to fetch her, or just stand there gawking? The incompetence tonight is staggering. A tiny smile touched my lips, though I doubt it reached my eyes. The sense of impending justice was palpable now. There's no need to fetch her. And why is that? Karen demanded, crossing her arms, her posture radiating defiance. Is she too busy hobnobbing to deal with loyal customers? Her friends? Because, I said, my voice ringing out clearly in the hushed room, reaching every curious ear nearby. I am Chloe. I own the Gilded Spoon. The reaction was everything I'd anticipated and more. Karen's jaw physically dropped. The smug certainty vanished from her face, replaced by a rapid-fire sequence of expressions, blank confusion, flickering disbelief, dawning horror, and finally, a deep, blotchy flush of crimson that started at her neckline and surged upwards. Her eyes darted frantically between me, Julian, and Sarah, searching for any sign that this was an elaborate prank. Finding only confirmation in our steady gazes, her mouth worked silently for a moment. I could practically see the gears grinding in her head, trying to reconcile the power-suited best friend of her imagination with the woman in the simple black blouse standing before her. You? No, she stammered, shaking her head slightly, her voice suddenly lacking its earlier force. That's impossible. Chloe looks, you're just staff. I assure you, I am Chloe, I repeated, keeping my tone level but firm, refusing to let her regain control. And Karen. I used the name deliberately, the one whispered among my staff, letting her know we knew. I've become quite familiar with your visits over the past few months. Her eyes widened slightly at the use of the name, a flicker of fear entering the mix. I know about your repeated demands for specific tables, like Booth 4, without reservations. I continue methodically, ticking off the points. I know about the endless, often baseless, complaints about our food and service. Food you usually manage to finish, I might add. That's not true, she sputtered, finding her voice again, though it trembled slightly. Your staff are rude. The food is inconsistent. I ignored the interruption, pressing on. I know about the incredibly disrespectful way you have treated my team members. I gestured briefly towards Julian and Sarah, including Liam, Maria, and others who have had the misfortune of serving you. People who strive every day to provide excellent hospitality, only to be met with your condescension. I saw Julian give a subtle nod of acknowledgement when I mentioned the documented incidents. Karen's face tightened further, her gaze shifting, unable to meet mine directly for more than a second. And most significantly, I said, my voice hardening, I know all about the elaborate fiction you've constructed regarding our supposed friendship. The weekly lunches we supposedly share? The brunches? The manicures? The promises I supposedly made about priority seating or friends and family discounts. I paused, letting the absurdity hang in the air. Let me make this crystal clear for you, and for everyone present. I have never met you before observing your behavior in my restaurant. We are not friends. We are not colleagues. We are not acquaintances. Until tonight, you are just a particularly problematic customer who, it seems, is also a pathological liar. A collective gasp rippled through the nearby tables. Karen flinched as if struck. Her companions looked utterly mortified now. The woman buried her face in her hands briefly, while the man stared fixedly at his shoes. You have consistently used my name, my identity as a weapon, I declared, my voice resonating with controlled anger. You've used it to bully my staff, to try and manipulate them into breaking our policies, to demand undeserved special treatment, and to generally make their working lives miserable. You've left false, damaging reviews online. You've tried to undermine the very foundation of respect this restaurant is built on. I took a breath, scanning the room quickly. The Gilded Spoon is meant to be a place of welcome, of celebration, of enjoyment. That requires mutual respect. Respect for the food, respect for the ambience, and most importantly, respect for the hardworking people who make it all possible. I turned my full attention back to Karen, whose face was now pale beneath the angry flush, her eyes glittering with a mixture of fury and humiliation. Your behavior, Karen, has demonstrated a complete lack thereof. It has been consistently entitled, disruptive, dishonest, and frankly, unacceptable. It will not be tolerated any longer. I let the silence stretch for a beat, then delivered the final verdict. Therefore, effective immediately, you are permanently banned from the Gilded Spoon. You are no longer welcome here. You can't do this, she finally exploded, her voice high-pitched and cracking. This is outrageous. I'll call my lawyer. I'll post about this everywhere. I have powerful friends. You will regret crossing me. Her hands were trembling now. No, I said, my voice dropping back to a quiet, final tone. I don't think I will. The only thing I regret is not doing this sooner. I gestured towards the exit. Now, I need you and your party to gather your belongings and leave the premises. Immediately. And please, try to do so without causing further disruption to our other guests. For a heart-stopping moment, I thought she might actually become physically aggressive. Her fists were clenched, her body tense. But Julian took another smooth, almost imperceptible step forward, a silent, solid presence reinforcing my words. Sarah stood beside him, equally resolute. Karen looked around desperately, seeking any hint of support, but found only disapproving or averted gazes. Her companions were already backing towards the door, whispering frantically for her to come on. The fight visibly drained out of her. The righteous indignation collapsed under the weight of public exposure and irrefutable facts. With a sound that was half-sob, half-strangled cry of pure rage, she spun around, her movements jerky and uncoordinated. "Let's go," she spat at her companions, her voice thick with tears of fury. "This place is a disgusting, pretentious dump anyway. Terrible service. In her haste and agitation, she misjudged the space, bumping hard against a nearby garrote laden with polished silverware, sending several forks clattering noisily to the floor. She didn't stop to apologize or even look back. Head down, face burning, she practically fled towards the exit, her mortified friends trailing in her wake. The heavy door swung shut behind them, leaving behind a stunned silence, the distant clatter of dropped forks, and the undeniable feeling that justice, long overdue, had finally been served. The thud of the door closing behind Karen felt like the punctuation mark at the end of a very long, very stressful sentence. For a moment, the only sound was the gentle jazz music and the lingering echo of dropped silverware. Then, slowly, the normal sounds of the restaurant began to filter back in: conversation, the clink of glasses. But the energy had shifted. It was lighter somehow. Julian immediately bent down to discreetly retrieve the fallen forks, while Sarah moved towards the nearest tables, offering quiet apologies for the disturbance. I took a slow, deep breath, feeling the knot of tension that had been residing in my stomach for weeks finally begin to unravel. The adrenaline started to fade, leaving behind a profound sense of weary relief. Several team members caught my eye from across the room, offering nods, thumbs up, and visible expressions of relief. Maria, the server who had endured Karen's passive-aggressive complaints just weeks before, walked by with a tray of drinks and gave me a wide, genuine smile. "Boss," she murmured, "that was amazing. Thank you." Hearing that, seeing the relief on her face, confirmed it was absolutely the right, albeit difficult, decision. A few moments later, Mr. Henderson from Booth 4 waved me over again. He and his wife looked slightly stunned, but also somewhat amused. "My dear Chloe," he said, leaning forward conspiratorially, "I must say, your anniversary celebration comes with unexpected floor shows. Brilliantly handled. Truly. Some people simply need a firm hand." His wife nodded in agreement. "We were wondering how long you'd put up with her," she added quietly. "We've seen her here before. Dreadful woman." Their support and the quiet nods from other regulars meant a lot. It reinforced that Karen's behavior hadn't gone unnoticed by others, and that standing up for my team and my establishment's values was recognized and appreciated. The rest of the anniversary weekend went beautifully, infused with a renewed sense of positivity. Later that night, during our usual post-service wind-down in the kitchen, the team was buzzing. Not explicitly about Karen, but the relief was tangible. Julian recounted, with dry humor, some of Karen's most outrageous, Chloe said, claims from his logbook, leading to shared laughter rather than stressed sighs. Liam, the young server who had been so flustered by her previously, clapped me on the shoulder. "Seriously, Chloe, seeing you handle that, it meant a lot to all of us." In the days that followed, I kept half an eye on review sites, expecting some sort of retaliatory digital tantrum from Karen. Nothing appeared. No angry emails, no calls from lawyers, no social media onslaught. It seemed that the public nature of her downfall, the sheer embarrassment of being caught so definitively in her lies in front of witnesses, was enough to silence her. Perhaps she realized any further action would only expose her behavior even more. Reflecting on it all, the whole ordeal felt surreal. Running a business, especially a restaurant, means dealing with difficult situations, but Karen took it to a whole new level. Her entitlement wasn't just about wanting a better table. It was about wielding a fabricated sense of importance to belittle and control others. The ultimate irony, of course, was how perfectly her own strategy backfired. She tried to use my name, my authority, as her weapon, only to have that weapon turned directly against her by the very person she was impersonating. It was a lesson in audacity, in the strange ways people try to navigate the world, and a powerful reminder of the importance of standing firm on principles, especially when it comes to protecting the people who help build your dream. It was stressful, yes, but the satisfaction of seeing my team breathe easier, knowing that the gilded spoon was safe from her particular brand of toxicity. That was the sweetest resolution of all.